Hey everybody, Tim here, back with another episode of the Chicago Northwestern Harvard Subdivision in N scale. And it's been about a month since I've put out the last video, that was the overview video to kind of provide a general update on what I'm trying to do with the layout. The main reason why is because I had kind of pivoted to my other hobby for a while. I mentioned in a couple videos I also play a tabletop miniatures game called Warhammer 40K, and I had a chance to go out and play in a competitive tournament for the first time in over a year. So I was busy painting up my Black Templar army, getting that all ready to go. Takes a lot of time to do all that. So I was, away from the trains for a little bit, and I went down to Wichita, Kansas for the Flying Monkey tournament, and that's me. I was on the stream actually for round five because I had a pretty good tournament. I went 4-0 and then lost my last two games, and so unfortunately, I finished 4-2, which is still pretty solid. But that's the beauty of having multiple hobbies is, I was getting a little burnt out on the trains. I switched over to Warhammer, got really hyped and had a lot of fun with Warhammer for a while. But then as soon as the tournament was done, I was really missing working on the layout. And so I was able to come back rejuvenated to work on the trains. So this is kind of this is the state of the layout when I came back from the tournament and started working on things again. I cleaned up a lot of the extra crud and tools and stuff that I had kind of let clutter up. I'm trying to be more purposeful in cleaning the space up. But you can see, this is kind of the area where I started doing a little bit of scenery. That's where the highway overpass will eventually go. And then obviously the tracks, the triple mainline tracks curve around, go under real fast. But then the main line curves back around, through the wall. And then goes into the staging yard, which at this point is empty because, again, I want to keep my rolling stock and locomotives clean. If I just leave them out too long, I'm afraid they'll collect dust. So the first thing I started to work on was I laid down the road bed for the two sidings that need to go down towards the farthest area that I've been able to get work done. And remember, I'm kind of on pause on expanding because the next big thing is to build the wall to continue expanding. But I also wanted to keep extending the hardboard out, which is where the backdrop will go. And again, I need to put the shelving brackets in first because those go in behind the hardboard. I was trying to show you the time lapse of me getting everything put in. But you'll see here in a second, for some reason, the video cut out short, so you only see me doing just a little bit here. And the reason I use that plywood again is to give me a wider base to install both the bracket and the spacer that I use to then mount the hardboard onto the stud. And so you can see here, I've added that in, and then the beauty of the hardboard is, you can it can curve pretty well. So while I was waiting to put that in, I also dropped in the feeder wires because I needed to wire this section because I did put in some insulated joiners for future signaling and pieces. I then jumped over to my parents' house real quick. We go and visit my parents with my wife and kids every weekend. So I brought some hardboard with me because they have a table saw and I don't, and I was able to cut strips of both fascia and backdrop. And so I put that curve piece in. Man, hardboard's really fun to work with when you want to do a curve. It's real smooth to work with, and then once you get it screwed in on both sides, it's staying in that shape and how you want it. Especially then, I use some glue and other pieces to fit it into place. So then I put a long strip of about a 7-foot long strip of fascia down, and I let it kind of form a natural curve, so that way it looks a little more natural and less angular like it did previously. That's obviously going to leave a gap where there's no foam, and I'll show you in a little bit, but I'll eventually go and add some foam and use some glue and some joint compound to make to fill in the gaps and make it look nice. So then obviously the next major thing I had to do was to go ahead and solder the wires, and you can see here this is me working on getting that all done. And the other main thing too that I want to talk about while you're watching me get everything soldered is getting ready. I do want to kind of take a pause on the basic construction stuff that you're seeing so far in this video, and hopefully in the next video I'm making just a lot of general hobby progress. I really want to go through and do a little bit more scenery work back over by Heller Lumber and really start to make that more of a complete scene. The other piece I want to start working on, you might have noticed the one downside of where I added that curved hardboard is there's a really sharp right angle where the wall is, which really can't be avoided, but it definitely doesn't look natural in terms of trying to, create a realistic environment for trains to run through. What I'm going to start to construct to try and solve that problem is to build a pretty large multi-story structure, because downtown Arlington Heights has some pretty large, pretty tall buildings, and I'm going to build it to essentially wrap around that right angle wall. So that way, when you're looking, especially at track level, you won't see this odd right angle on the backdrop. You'll see a pretty large building that's at, you're just looking at it at the corner of the building. And while that certainly, if you look up towards where the sky portion of the backdrop will be, you'll be able to figure that out. I think it'll work the treat. So, and again, I'm just trying to get all of this soldering done, at the same time. You can see I had some wires that I thought were good, but they didn't catch. I always just give the wires a nice good tug to make sure that they're actually firmly soldered to the rail. And what you're looking at is me fixing the wires that did not pass the quick pull test. But after that, it was after I fed this last one down and did a resolder. You can see I'm using my daughter's makeup mirror again to make sure I've got a good sight on the back side of the track. After that, though, it was all good to go. The next thing, obviously, then is to clean up all the wires underneath and get them organized onto terminal strips. I got to get better. I really overestimate, and there's the terminal strips I'm going to put them on. I really overestimate how much feeder wire I need. I'm really starting to get wasteful on it because obviously I'm going to cut a lot of that down. But I always love the before and after because I love a really nice, well-organized set of wires. Especially, for the feeders. I then went through and ran the main bus wires through. At this point, they had stopped kind of where you see the P42 at right now. And then after I ran those and connected everything, I got out the trusty number 90. I don't know why my phone decided to zoom in right there, but ran the trusty number 90 up and down. I did all 3 tracks. I don't need to show you that clip, obviously, just to make sure there was nice, consistent power. And again, at this point, it's past the insulated joiners, so I knew it was good to go. But you saw at the start of the video that I had some additional passenger locomotives. I had sent 3 passenger locomotives and a couple of cars off to get custom painted. Mark Gaith, again, and I'll put a link in the video description, did a phenomenal job getting this done. Really awesome work. I had to wait quite a few months. He's pretty full up. He's got a lot of customers, but it's well worth the wait. So this P42, I got it from Lombard Hobbies. It had the sound decoder already installed, and you can see it's going up and down the tracks with the sound just fine. And this is more of the true original CNW yellow. My other P42 number 90 looks more, you can see the contrast here, has more of the newer the Zito yellow from the 80s. I wanted it to be in the original CNW, and I learned that Badger's that's what Badger says is the original CNW yellow, what my number 90 is. And it's not, right? This is what you're looking at right now is much closer to the original yellow. And so again, you can really notice the difference when you get it up close. I still like it. I think it's kind of cool to have a consist in the lighter yellow scheme. And my plan is to get a second P42 in each of these 2 schemes and to get a second set of 5 Amfleet coaches painted up. So that way I've got 3 full consists that have a locomotive on each end. And so, again, really happy with how these turned out. But you notice the front 2 locomotives are not P42s. Those are the Bombardier ALP45 DPs. In real life, they run predominantly in New Jersey. But the cool thing is, these are dual-purpose locomotives. They are powered either by diesel or by overhead electrical. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I figure since the CNW has maintained the Pacific Extension and maintained its electrification in my world of the layout, I figured that the CNW would want to experiment with some possible dual-purpose locomotives, because up in Minneapolis, where the 400 is finished, is going to be electrified in the world of the layout. And so I thought that would be kind of a cool twist to add some variety to even the passenger operations. And that way, I just thought it was cool. I think they turned out great. I think Mark did a great job, especially because he really just had to go off of my vague description of what I wanted to look like. There's really no prototype equivalent. I did run into an issue. The ALP45 DPs are made by Atlas. I ran into an issue, and I wish I had recorded it. I ran both of the locomotives, and one of them just crawled, would not, barely moving even at full, the 28th step. And I did some research, and it sounds like with these, with the run that Atlas did, for some of them, you gotta just really run the crap out of the engine to get it kind of warmed up, lubricated. I don't know how you want to put it, but eventually, after running that one that was running real slow, I ran it up and down the layout for about 20 minutes, and it finally got relatively close to what the other one ran fine. The other one had no problems, and the sound on both was great. So I finally got to the point where I consisted them to kind of test and see, and you can see there's still going to be a speed difference, right? Even though it's the exact same locomotive, there's still a noticeable speed difference. So I then ran it a little bit more, and I might just have to go in and change some decoder settings, but eventually they got close enough where I could consist them and actually run them. So this is my vision for what the consists are going to look like, where it's a locomotive on each end, 2 coach cars, and then in the middle a cafe car, 2 more coach cars, and then obviously a locomotive on the far end. And so I think this is going to look great. It's got decent enough length, right? It's not too long, but it's long enough to really, it can fill a whole scene with how long these passenger cars are, and especially having them sound equipped, they're going to be awesome, moving down the layout. And so this is my chance to kind of test it out. And again, smooth sound, great sound, nice acceleration up to speed. And I think that the Atlas ALP45s with the Rapido Horizons is a good match. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I ran it up and down the layout, as you can see here. I ran into some problems when I was running it, and I thought it might be rolling stock, and there is a little rolling stock issue, but I also realized that the lift out is slightly higher on one end than the main area, and you're going to see, I did it in slow-mo so you could see it. You're going to see it derail right here. That's because that side of the lift out is, not barely measurable, like a millimeter higher, but it's just enough that when you try and run into it, it bumps and it knocks that train off the road. So I'm going to sand down the block that it's resting on, which should solve that problem. But after I ran those locomotives and gave them a test run, I went back through and started slowly adding foam. I cut them into shapes. It didn't have to be perfect because again I was using filler. So the camera got weird there. I was using filler to so it didn't have to be a perfect fit. There was ways. And what I do in those kind of larger gaps is I do like a paper towel base, and then I went in and laid some filler to close the gaps. And so you can see, again, with the foam down, it looks even better. Again, I love the curve looks so much better than the angle that it was at previously. I then did some filler there. You can see there was a slight gap between the two hardboard panels, and I wanted to fix that. I also went through and added a little small fascia strip on the angle there, so that way there's not kind of a weird gap in the fascia when I put the lift out section down, which after that dries and I paint it will look really nice. I filled in the gap for the new backdrop that I put in this video, and so you can see again how the layout's looking right now, and again really pleased with how it's turning out. And again, man, it's such it's amazing how simple of an improvement just adding fascia has. But now it was time. I got another one of my backdrops in from Cena King. This is a more kind of urban backdrop, which is important because, again, I'll show you downtown Arlington Heights has some pretty noticeably tall structures for a suburb. I trimmed a little bit off the bottom because I wanted to bring the buildings more kind of to the foreground of what the scene is going to look like. But I made the cuts and trims to make it fit onto the backdrop that I had. And then I used the Gorilla spray adhesive, and I think it looks great. And it's going to look really good once I start to actually get the structures in that I'm going to be placing that are going to go right up flush to the backdrop. And so now I kind of want to show you a similar clip to what I showed you at the start. And you can see with the additional backdrop, hardboard, fascia, even though I only added just some sidings track-wise, it looks like a much more developed layout than what it did at the start of the week when I started working on all of this and putting it all together. And again, this is about as far as the layout's going to look for a little bit because I have to wait until my friend of mine is ready and available to build the wall that I'll mount the next part of the layout too that's going to come across this. But it was certainly a chance. I wanted to definitely run some trains with the new backdrop in the background, and I gotta fix. You're gonna see this in both of these clips. I gotta figure out how to get my phone to do a better job of maintaining focus on the space I wanted to when I step away, because I got to go back and obviously maintain the throttle. So I'll make sure to get a better focused video clip for you next time so you can see how it really looks. But again, I really love how that backdrop looks up close. And you can see a shot here of the new P42 guiding the new consist of Horizon coaches down through the Heller lumber area. And again, really, really happy with how it turned out. So I'll close by giving you, again, one last pass of where things are. Again, next episode, I'm going to hopefully do some more hobby work. Where I want to do is extend the scenery through the lift out section. So I don't want to start to work on the Arlington Heights area yet, but I want to make a lot of progress on the Heller lumber area because a number of the 3D printed pieces I wanted have arrived. Flock and base and ballast the lift out. But that's on deck for next time. So thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. It helps the algorithm and helps other model railroad folks find the channel. So again, thanks for all your support. We'll see you next time.